Yesterday, Joe Biden announced his $2 trillion plan to shore up the nation's infrastructure and create jobs. And I think this plan is just outstanding. And of course, every single filthy Christian fascist immediately vomited up their objection to it. That's because they want to destroy the country. So I don't want to talk about them right now. This proposal that he came up with, it's going to cost $2 trillion. That's the initial cost. You might increase that by 50% because we know that once governments start issuing contracts, there's so much fraud involved. And I don't mean by the government. I mean by the capitalists who decide, oh, goddamn, look, a $2 trillion fountain spewing money. Let's grab some. And then rather than doing it honestly and openly, in so many instances, the graft and corruption is just astounding. So let's add in another $500 billion for the graft and corruption that surely will come from the contractors, large and small, who decide to take advantage of this fountain of money that Biden's proposing. But Biden proposes that it would be paid for within 15 years by simply changing the tax structure on corporations from 21% to 28%, as if they can't afford it. Oh my God. Corporations during this pandemic have made incredible profit. And one indicator, although it's kind of a false indicator in so many ways, but one indicator is the New York Stock Exchange. If you follow the numbers from the tech stocks and the Dow Jones Industrials, you see enormous profits being taken someplace. And those profits have got to come ultimately from production or speculation, one of the two. And it's my understanding from reading Paul Krugman's take on the economy, that this economy is poised right now on the verge of a tremendous boom. If this Joe Biden infrastructure plan goes through, because of the literally millions of jobs that will be created. We so need this. We just need it. But higher taxes on corporations and on the wealthy. If you earn, after your accountant, jiggers the figures around and pushes this down and pushes that over there, yada, yada, yada. If your net income, I believe it's net income, or taxable income is under $400,000, up to $400,000 and less, you're not going to see a tax increase. But if your income is from $400,001 up to the tens and 20 millions that some of these son of a bitches are making by speculation, by all the nefarious ways that capitalism allows people to steal and gouge and take and boost their own personal wealth. If this can be accomplished, then paying for it in 15 years is a given. An increase in taxes on corporations, an increase in taxes, not that much, on people who are the massive wealth accumulators in this country. I think it's exceedingly fair. It's not confiscatory. I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't know this at the time, but when I was a kid, the tax rate who was it under? Was it under Eisenhower? Was almost confiscatory. I think the upper limit of the tax rate was 90% for the multimillionaires. Now, granted, there weren't that many back then, but when you had a upper limit tax of 90%, what is it now? 38%? And if that, and for the people who make money by manipulating money, what is it for them? Nothing? It's madness. And this is where capitalism is going to have to bend, or it's going to break. One of the two. But I digress. Among the proposals that Biden has put out there to modernize 20,000 miles of highways and roads. Boy, I'll tell you, if you've traveled on the interstate highway system anytime in the past year or two, you know how in need the interstate highway is where it concerns repairs. When the interstate first opened, it was like riding on glass. I remember that. Do you remember that? When different segments of Interstate 75 opened, which was the one that went from Toledo to Tampa. And when that first opened, it was like riding on the smoothest road ever created. Like, what? Wow. But the roads over the years, of course, over the past 60 years, 70 years since those interstates have been in place, have deteriorated. And of course they will, from the weather, freezing, from the humidity, from the heat, from the massive travel, tenfold, 20-fold, 100-fold increase in traffic over these interstates. So they're constantly in need of repair. During the 4 years of this filthy bastard Donald Trump, nothing like this was done. Oh, he was going to have the best infrastructure program. Oh, we're going to have this. It's all be shiny and new. You'll love it. You'll love it. Bullshit. What a liar this scumsucker was. But, keep dangling. That was the Orange Bastard's theory. Keep dangling little sparkly things in front of people's eyes and don't give them shit. Just keep talking about, well, we'll get to it, but the Democrats are holding us back. Well, now we have the chance, the opportunity, with no help from the Christian fascists. They're not going to participate in this at all. But Biden has the right idea. 20,000 miles of highways and roads to be modernized. Repair 10,000 bridges in this country. And by 2030, which is 9 years from now, build a network of 500,000 electric vehicle chargers so that people who do buy electric vehicles will have a service station, you might call it, where they can pull in, recharge their vehicle, and go on. That's just part of it. Now, what I'm going to do here, and stick with me on this because I think you need to know about this, the estimated cost in billions of how this $2 trillion plan breaks down. Okay? It's not going to hurt you to listen. Anyway, for the electric vehicle incentives, to get people to buy electric vehicles, there has to be incentives. Before I start with this, let me tell you what they did here in Georgia to show you how far up its ass the heads of government here in Georgia have been. Back in the day, not that long ago, maybe 10 years ago, when electric vehicles first started to come into vogue for a number of reasons, I bought one. First I started with a Prius, and there were tax breaks, federal and state. And then I moved to a Leaf, which was total electric. And the way it worked 8-9 years ago was very simple. If you bought one of these vehicles here in Georgia, you got a $6,000 tax break. And on your federal income tax, you got another $4,000 or $5,000 tax break. This was money you could deduct from your income, your gross income. And I thought, my God, this makes perfect sense. Well, the federal tax break, I think, ran out. But here in Georgia, they took away, as soon as the Republicans got control, they took away the tax break for electric vehicles. And not only that, they added a surcharge. If you bought an electric vehicle, you had to pay what they called an alternative fuel tax. So if you bought an electric vehicle, you had to pay more when you got the license for that vehicle. Not less, not a tax break, but the sons of bitches added to the cost of your tag every year as punishment for buying something designed to improve the atmosphere, to attempt to put a brake on global warming. And these filthy bastards here in Georgia in the government, that's why this state is just so backward. I mean, when you hear about Ossoff and Warnock winning Senate seats or Biden winning the election here, and then what happens immediately? This goddamn state, the representatives who run it, the Christian fascists, immediately try to destroy the possibility of that happening again. And when an idea of offering tax breaks to people who buy electric cars, when that starts to show that people are buying electric cars, well, what's the first thing the Christian fascists have to do? Stop it. Stop it quick. Kill it. That's Georgia. Biden's plan, electric vehicle incentives, $174 billion. Roads and bridges, $115 billion. These are the allocations that he has proposed for these various projects. Public transit, $85 billion. Passenger and freight railways, getting away from the old style engines and moving to all electric, or even to the maglev, the magnetic levitating vehicles. Disaster resilience, getting ready for the next hurricane that is surely coming, the next earthquake that is surely coming, the next massive fires in the West, East, Midwest, wherever that are surely coming. $50 billion. And other, where it concerned, these are all under transportation. And then $35 billion to go into call it a slush fund for the things that come up that aren't anticipated. Let's move on. Well, no, still in transportation. $25 billion to improve our airports. $20 billion to improve road safety, which, among other things, would get rid of some of these, I'm sure, some of these metal fences along the sides of interstates that are just death traps. Somebody has a collision with one of those, they're dead. The thing will just slice right through your vehicle, decapitate everybody in the car, and what could have been an injury accident becomes a multiple death accident. Such is part of it. Underserved communities, $20 billion. That includes transportation. Now we know what underserved communities are, don't we? Yes, we certainly do. Those are usually communities within cities where black or brown people or immigrant people live, and they struggle just to get from point A to point B. And some of the rural communities where public transportation is unheard of. What? Out here in the country? Yes, out there in the country. Waterways and ports, which includes things, I'm sure, like dredging to make sure that these ports don't result in an accident like what happened in the Suez Canal a week or so ago. $17 billion there. Okay, next topic is buildings and utilities. One of the largest investments here in Biden's plan includes more than $200 billion in tax credits and grants to improve and build affordable housing. Now, every time affordable housing is mentioned here in Atlanta that I've seen, the developers talk about affordable housing as they tear huge chunks of Atlanta into dust and remove hundreds, if not tens of hundreds, well, that would be thousands, wouldn't it, Mike? Thousands of acres of woodlands in metro Atlanta. When I first moved here 50 years ago, this was a city in the forest. It was incredible to see when you flew into Atlanta. Now it's a city in the woods, but not a forest. But I digress. Every time I have seen affordable housing mentioned as what a developer is going to do as they rip shit to pieces, the affordable housing turns out to be houses that maybe sell for under $300,000, or apartments that rent for maybe under $1,800 a month. That is considered affordable housing. Now consider two people both work for minimum wage. Their entire paychecks are, first of all, not enough to qualify them to buy a house, and secondly, barely would pay the rent on an apartment like that. So when they talk about affordable housing, the developers, up to, well, at least in my experience, it's utter bullshit. This is one of those empty promises that results in people becoming very cynical when they hear these terms being used. Affordable housing, huh? Affordable for whom? Right. So anyway, affordable housing, Biden's plan is $213 billion. Maybe that would be used if federal guidelines are applied, which I'm sure they would, as to the square footage of a house, as to what the neighborhood has got to look at like when it's been fully developed, as to the pricing of the homes. It might work. High-speed broadband for the people who move into these neighborhoods, which is lacking. You take a city like Atlanta. I mean, this is the most forward-looking city in the South. Our only competitor might be Charlotte, North Carolina. But there are sections of Atlanta where broadband is just not available, where Wi-Fi is not available. And this has had a profound effect on the kids, especially minority kids who have been struggling to continue their educations while the schools have been closed. It's just been a terrible situation. So broadband, high-speed broadband, $100 billion for that. Okay, what else do we have here? Electric grid and clean energy. Would be included in the housing, which would probably include solar panels or systems of water collection from rainstorms that the household could then use. So electric grid and clean energy, $100 billion. Public schools, $100 billion. Oh my God, is that money needed? And not just inner city schools, so-called, but just about every school, except the big, beautiful ones that have been built in the suburbs. Oh, by the way, we're running out of time. All right, let me take a break. I'll be back momentarily, and we will continue with Biden's plan here to revitalize America. All right, stay with me. I'm Mike Malloy. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.